Mr. Daniel Steinman, before we went on a break, you really mentioned a very interesting example, and I personally can relate to it, where you have to go to a state clinic or a state hospital where you have to sit in a queue the whole day. You don't get service, but also you are exposed to so many inequalities while sitting there and waiting to see even just a nurse to check your blood pressure before you can see a doctor. So you see a lot of people, and it's so frustrating to see how the government is not doing enough. Even though there's a budget allocation for the Ministry of Health, but you don't see change. It's still the same thing over and over for so many years. So, Mr. Daniel Steinman, maybe you as an economist can make us maybe feel a little bit better, or give us hope that, maybe things will change.
Maybe. Elizabeth, the fundamental question is, if education is the biggest single allocation in the budget and health is the second biggest allocation, what do we accomplish by spending that money?
Yeah.
And the second question is all the money that are available for investment, there are two aspects, either investment or running the health system, both of them, and I'll touch on both of them. Is that money spent in such a way that you can see the results? And I think this is where we get to the crux of the thing.
Corruption.
I didn't say corruption, but
I said it.
Any reasonable, rational Namibian must ask himself or herself this question: when these two take up more than 1/3 of the budget, so it's billions and billions of dollars that get spent there. Why do we not see a substantial improvement in the quality of healthcare and in the availability? Now, I think when we talk about SMEs, I use the example of somebody living somewhere, let's say in Musati region, about 60 kilometers away from in a village, but 60 kilometers away, let's make it 30 kilometers away from a town. This is not typically a case with health. If you stay in a village and you are not living in a town, for you, when you're sick, you have to find money to pay somebody to take you to that town, to get to the clinic, to get your little plastic pocket full of Panados, or with 6 or 8 Panados in them. It is under par service, and it is not very representative, And obviously, where the population is higher in the 4O regions and in Kavango and in Zambezi, there you have more clinics. But there's no reason why a rural clinic must be neglected. You don't need to have a doctor at every clinic. If you have a properly trained nurse at a clinic, she does a lot. It's called primary health care. And I don't know if you remember a person by the name of Anshin Parkhouse. She's the doyen of nursing in Namibia. And her whole focus was always on primary health care. That you can take a very large part of the burden of the state providing healthcare services away by enabling the people in the rural areas, the nurses, because she was a nurse. The nurses, you have to enable the nurses to practice primary health care, to fill in almost for a doctor. And for a very simple reason, affordability. The government cannot have a doctor in every clinic. And also the utility value. I mean, you don't need a doctor to diagnose a child with a runny nose. Or at least as a non-medical practitioner, I'm talking now. I'm talking as somebody making outside observation. You don't need to have a very complicated diagnosis to treat an ailment. 8 out of 10 cases, usually the mother has a good idea what's wrong with the child. So she's the first line of screening. She diagnoses the child to a certain extent. The nurse confirms this, or if it is not the right diagnosis, she makes this. Those 20% or less of health cases where the expert advice of a doctor is needed, that you refer. That is no longer the type of condition that must be treated in a rural clinic. But the whole point, and this is where we come to health, and we'll briefly touch on education, but let's stick with health. The whole point is that the rural clinic must be staffed and it must be furnished to the level that it can handle those 8 out of 10 cases efficiently, and provide more than just 4 or 5 panados for 2 or 3 nights. This is where we are very much lacking in our ability to take healthcare to the population, and it becomes a little bit of a farce if we want to celebrate World Health Day, but we cannot provide in the very basics, and not because of no money being available from the budget. It is, but the channels in the ministries to get the money from where the Ministry of Finance allocates it to the ground level where that money must work. This is where I often see serious problems.
And we will talk about that serious problems once we return from this short break.